Welcome to episode 337 of the Shared Security Podcast. This week, we're going to talk about some breaking news, first of all, regarding a new SSH vulnerability called regreSSHion, with the SSH in the middle. I don't know who comes up with these names, but maybe we'll talk about that too.
Qualys.
Qualys, yes. And then we're going to talk about how the Detroit Police Department is agreeing to new rules around facial recognition technology, mainly because it doesn't really work very well. Let's just say that for now. And then in our Aware Much segment, Scott's going to talk about a topic that it just keeps coming up. What do you do before you sell your old PCs, laptops, smartphones, anything with your personal data on it? So, very important topic for sure. And look who's joining me this week. I have both co-hosts. I have Kevin Johnson back from Portugal, and then I have Scott, who's actually in his car. This is amazing.
Or is it a virtual background?
Or is it a virtual? Yes. So if you're on the YouTube channel, you never know. And when you see Scott, it does look
there's
pretty
somebody
virtual.
about to hit me. Sorry.
So,
This is real. Wow.
People with virtual backgrounds, when you get on when you get on a call like this, and the person has a virtual background, right? Do you immediately start wondering how gross the room is, or is that just me?
I've started to recently.
I'm one of those people. Like, if my office isn't clean for whatever reason, especially since I have a desk like behind me, like for work, like I have a desk that has like my electronics and I do a lot of stuff like that, and it can get pretty messy. I'm putting the blurry background up.
Yeah. I was on a client call once. I think I've said this before. I was on a client call once, and they were working an incident, right? And we were helping advise, and this guy joined, and it was absolutely the most disgusting room I've ever seen. Like, you know how you like watch movies and there's that horror movie and they're in an abandoned building and it looks like all of Chicago has taken a dump in the room. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yes.
Don't go in there.
I'm describing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was behind this guy, right? And he was on the call for a good 5 minutes maybe. And obviously at some point it caught his eye what his image looked like. And he like reacted, and then he disconnected, and about 30 seconds later he reconnected, and he had this absolutely gorgeous modern, living room background.
Oh yes.
And it was every bit of my self-control, which you both know I don't have a ton of, to not call him out and go, man, that's a really beautiful background. Where did you get that? But since then, every time somebody has a virtual background, I'm like, messy.
Yes. Yeah. No shame in that, though.
No, yeah, absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that guy should have shame.
Well, yeah.
Other
maybe
than
that
him,
guy.
everybody else
right.
has shame.
Well, let's quickly talk about this regreSSHion vulnerability that was just released. Of course, this is great timing because, all of these new, critical vulnerabilities have to be released before a holiday. I mean, that's kind of tradition, right?
Hey, at least in this case, they did it on Monday. They didn't do it
True.
today. Right?
Not quite. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
I will
tried
say
really
though,
hard.
I take exception to the breaking news aspect of this. Yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
2 reasons. One of them being this flaw is from 2006. I know.
It's
It
an
regressed.
addition.
Yes, it
right.
regressed. We'll get to that. But the other reason is I listened to this podcast. We've talked about it before. Serious Trouble with Ken White, and I can never remember the other guy's name. Excellent podcast. Awesome podcast. I cannot recommend it enough. It's about legal stuff, right? And the reporter guy, I can't believe I can't remember his name. Every time he uses the term breaking news, Ken White, the former prosecutor's like, it's a podcast. We can't have breaking news on a podcast.
That's
recorded and released.
That's a great point.
I don't know. It isn't broken.
Breaking news now. It's
I
broken news.
I think I used the term before, broken news, because it's already broken.
So this week's broken news.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Mark Dowd is who found the original flaw back in 2006, right? Am I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And they fixed it. Like OpenSSH fixed it, which is good. The reaction to it and everything else like that. But it came back, and this honestly is for me one of the core problems we have with application security, with security in general, but application security is this. We've talked about this, right? Our job is not to find cool hacks. Our job is to help organizations be better, be safer, be whatever. And when we find cool hacks, which don't get me wrong, I like finding cool hacks. We have to make sure that we educate and demonstrate and everything else how it works overall to prevent that this type of regression. Because to me, this is a sign that somehow in the development process, this flaw, the developers weren't educated well enough, or the flaw wasn't remediated correctly. And by correctly, I mean in a way that removed its ability from coming back, right? Their development process is what failed here, not code, even though the code did fail, right? Right. We see this constantly where, hey, I mean, I've joked about it, right? You find SQL injection in a web app and you hand them the example tick or 1 = 1, right? And then they ask you to retest it. You do tick or 2 = 2, semicolon -- space, and it works, right? Like, because they fixed the problem. That's a more extreme example of this, right? But here's an issue where what this tells me, bluntly, is the OpenSSH project did not build a test case for this problem.
Yeah.
And that's where I think things failed, right?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to call out on this one. I mean, first of all, it's a race condition that is kind of the vulnerability, which are very hard. Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, and kudos to Qualys for the detail they put together in the write-up of this vulnerability. I mean, this was a very complicated, and it is not an easy exploit to conduct.
No.
That's the other piece of this, is that there are potentially thousands of attempts that would have to be made, and there's timing around that as well. Yes. So like this would be a very dedicated attacker that would have to do something like this. And the hope is, and they do talk about this in the mitigations, is that, if you're doing good defense in depth already,
your monitoring is doing well, right?
Exactly. Then this should not be an exploitable thing.
Yeah.
But
not that it should be.
It is exploitable, but it is like the chances of this happening are reduced significantly with good security controls.
Like if you've got 10,000 attempts, with 120 seconds between them or something, it's going to take you 1 to 2 days, even parallelizing it by 10 times. It's like 1 or 2 days until you get a shell. Now, of course, that's the maximum time, right? You can get a shell the first request, give you a shell. And the only reason I'm calling that out
you could get lucky.
Yeah. Right. This is not a case where 10,000 attempts get you the shell. It's on average, it takes 10,000 times. So it could also take 1,000,000 times, right? Like the 1 time and the 1,000,000 time, based on my reading of this, are just as likely, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's hard to convince people to move forward on.
Right. So obviously still patch this. Look at your security controls. There was a lot of discussion on Twitter about, hey, you should have firewall rules allowing only certain IPs to connect through your externally facing SSH if you do choose to do that, which, you shouldn't have SSH open to the entire world. Typically. Yes. So there should be controls already in place, but I think there's some interesting discussions, and I thought it was worthy to mention on the show just because they're, and for those of you that are not aware what the hell we're talking about in terms of what is SSH, it is in simplistic terms, it is a way of connecting securely to a remote server. So you've heard of FTP. This is, let's just say, a much more secure way of connecting through encryption, essentially, end-to-end encryption from one remote server to another. Is that a good way of explaining it, Kevin?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Typically
there you have it,
used for
folks.
administration or development on that
Yeah.
server and stuff like that. It's not typically something an end user is going
Correct.
to do to a machine. Now, that's
Yeah.
not always true, just to be clear, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there you have it. We'll have links in the show notes if you think you want to, deep dive into kind of the technical details of it. We'll link to the Qualys report, which is really good. But let's jump into talking about Detroit, their police department, and some new rules that they are implementing around facial recognition due to basically a settlement around a gentleman, Roger Williams. He was wrongly arrested due to facial recognition, and he actually got $300,000 from the city.
Should have been higher.
Because what's that?
Should have been higher.
Should have been. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For being arrested due to being misidentified through facial recognition. Now, we talked about this many times in the past, right? That this technology is frequently doing things where it's misidentifying people or falsely identifying people.
And I think it's important to point out that this is a case where inordinately more occurrences of false positives for minorities.
Yes, specifically.
Right?
Yeah.
And in this case, as the article says, right, Roger Williams, a black man who was arrested, right? Like, we know, and we have known for a very long time that facial recognition fails on minorities. And yet, the police departments, I'm sorry, this is one of those cases where it just pisses me off because of the fact that we know, right? This is not a case of, well, did we have enough evidence that the technology was bad? Did we have, nobody is arguing that facial recognition is foolproof. We're not even arguing that facial recognition is halfway decent.
Right.
In cases like this, right? And we're taking, and if I understand correctly from the article, because I dug into it a little bit, but I didn't, right? Like, they didn't do facial recognition as, okay, he ran by a camera, they took the picture, and so they ran him by another camera and it recognized him. No, it pulled up his driver's license and said, hey, this driver's license photo. I challenge anybody who disagrees, anybody who says, well, facial recognition is good enough, pull out your damn driver's license and tell me that picture looks like you. Right? Like,
yeah.
Everybody I know complains that the driver's license picture is awful, right? So now we have a technology that is proven not to do well with minorities, and then we take the worst example of a photo of the person and compare them. We should have bankrupted the Detroit Police Department. Sorry. And we should have bankrupted whatever company sold them the software and bankrupted whatever commissioner agreed to run it. This is one of those cases. We're going to put my screw you hippie hat on for a second. And this is one of those cases where in concept, this makes sense, right? In concept, hey, you know what? Instead of us just having some 22-year-old kid that came out of, 3.5 minutes of training and put him in a uniform and shoved him in a car and had him drive 60 miles an hour down residential streets, blowing his sirens, looking out the window and catching the glimpse of the side of a guy's face and then going, oh, that's him, tase him, tackle him. Instead of doing that, let's have technology recognizing. That makes sense. I'm a nerd. I love that idea. But we know it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. I think you and I talked about the false face recognition stuff back in 2007.
We did, yeah.
And we weren't, this wasn't research we discovered. We were talking about stuff that had been known forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's possible, though, that people feel that in that period of time, things have progressed to a point. You remember, not long before that, fingerprint technology was very unreliable, and all of a sudden the iPhone has it for its authentication, and everybody kind of trusts it.
But I'm gonna tell you you're wrong, Scott, and here's what I'm gonna tell you you're wrong. Couple reasons, okay? And I love you, man. I just want to point it out. One, There are lots of people that think Trump was a good president. We've proven that people's feelings aren't the way for us to make decisions. Second, fingerprint technology to unlock your phone, yes, has been unreliable. Fingerprint technology where the police pull a fingerprint and compare it to a printed copy of the fingerprint has not been unreliable in 100 years or something, right? So yes, you are absolutely right. I would hope that from 2007 to 2024, the jackholes that are creating facial recognition would think to themselves, we should probably get some black people in here to train them. But we also know they're not doing it, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it is better. I was just saying that there's a rationale that I think a lot of people kind of forgot or thought probably is better.
Yep. People who are not responsible for incarcerating people and ruining their lives feel that facial recognition is better. The people who are responsible for incarcerating people and ruining their lives, if they were innocent, shouldn't feel something is better. They should actually talk to an expert and say, hey, is this good? And they would have the expert. I do not know of a single expert out there, other ones paid by the vendors that are selling this to the police departments, those jackhole, unethical wastes of carbon. But I don't know a single person that is an expert at this stuff that says, you know what? We are so good at facial recognition, we should take random people based on their driver's license and lock them in a cell for 30 hours and then, whoops, mea culpa, I'm so sorry, qualified immunity, can't get me in trouble. But no, bite me. Sorry.
Yeah. Nope. And I don't think we disagree on that, Kevin. I think I maybe misrepresented or misarticulated things, but I totally agree with you.
Yeah, no, I know we don't disagree. I know that what you're saying is it should have gotten better, and I can see where they made that mistake.
Yeah.
I agree. I know that they made the mistake. I can see where they made the mistake because this dude went to jail for 30 hours, right? My issue is we need to hold people to a higher bar. I would expect them to hold me to that higher bar.
Yeah.
If I was the expert recommending this stuff, I'm going to hold them to the same bar. Sorry.
Agree.
Pet peeve.
Are you still relying on outdated managed file transfer tools? In today's world, the security of your sensitive data is more critical than ever. Introducing Kiteworks, the most secure and modern managed file transfer platform available. Kiteworks is audited yearly and continuously monitored by certified third-party assessors. With an ongoing bounty program, regular penetration testing, and one-click appliance updates, Kiteworks minimizes vulnerabilities like no other. Many traditional MFT solutions can't compare to the level of security and functionality Kiteworks provides. But that's not all. Kiteworks offers a world-class secure file sharing and email platform. Easily send automated or ad hoc files through fully integrated shared folders and email. Administrators can manage policies in a unified console and create custom integrations with their comprehensive REST API. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today.
I'll shut up now so we can move to my favorite jingle sound.
Yes, well, let's do that. Let's move to our favorite segment, which is Aware Much?
Yes, Tom. Every once in a while, we need awareness. And so we're here today to bring you much awareness. Brought to you by ClickArmor, the security training platform that is specialized in engagement and in tailorability. So we talk a lot about, targeted threats and ways that people can be tricked. But we don't talk an awful lot about opportunistic threats, as I would call them. We do try to remind people about them occasionally, and we're going to do that again today. And that is the kind of threat where it's actually pretty easy for an attacker to get some information, just they don't know who they're getting it about, but it's valuable anyway. And most cases, it's something like when we want to dispose of technology, whether it's mobile devices, laptops, even cards, devices with memory cards like cameras. But even more now, we've got any electronic device that has any amount of configurability allows you to store information about, your preferences or your profile. And a lot of times that includes personal information. So we just want to remind people that, it's still the case, and maybe more now than ever before, you really need to keep in mind as you're, getting tired of your old device, then you decide, I want to get a new laptop or a new tablet, and you set the old one aside, and you might need some of the data off of it at some point if you can't get it all migrated at one time. And then eventually it sits there and somebody says, we got to get rid of all this old stuff. So they just decide we're going to check it out. So try and keep you aware of the moments when you are likely to not need data on a device anymore, and you should be doing something to make sure it's safely deleted. So do you guys have any tips or advice on situations that where people can remember this stuff better?
Yeah, I think I have a really good one. Have you ever seen the show Hoarders?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the safest way to do it. Just fill your house with all your old electronics.
Never sell them. Never get rid of them. Yeah.
No, I seriously, I think this is a really important topic. And we've talked about this before. I've been on the news about it. I know Tom has been on the news about it. The local station here in Jacksonville actually brought a rental car to my office and interviewed me in the rental car. So, which I think is funny because it's now that I'm thinking about it, it's exactly what you're doing right now, Scott. And so on the simple side, if I may, I think on the simple side, pulling the drive, destroying that separately, you selling a laptop, yank the drive, don't sell it with the laptop, which of course is an extra cost, right? Because I want to buy a laptop.
With a hard drive.
With a hard drive, right?
That'd be nice. Yeah.
So it does, like, one of the things I've seen people do, which I like, is they buy a replacement drive and then they just account for that in the cost of doing it. And they make it a selling point, right? Brand new drive, fastest, whatever, upgraded, whatever. But you get into things, I had a smartwatch, Samsung watch and I stopped wearing it because I realized that it was distracting me more than my phone or not, right? Like I would get a notification, my wrist would start vibrating, right? And so I just gave it to a friend yesterday, right? He's visiting, come down, hanging out. I'm like, hey man, he saw it on the desk. We were talking. I'm like, you don't have a watch. You want that one? You didn't have it. And all I did was reset it.
Yeah.
I am sure that if you wanted to, you could figure out a way to get back to the data that's on that watch. Luckily, I didn't use it that way, so I'm not that worried. Plus, I trust him. But that reset isn't guaranteed to fix the data problem. So what do you do? And treating it as a throwaway item, I'd be hard pressed to convince people to do that.
Well, that is the society we live in now. It's a throwaway society. Everything is disposable, including your electronics and your SD cards and all of those things.
Yep.
And I think I think the point is for people to understand is that you can get data back. I mean, there is a thing called forensics, digital forensics. It's a well-known field, and there are a lot of tools and techniques to do that. But there are ways of securely wiping your devices. The thing to point out is, for the general consumer, the first step you should do is always factory reset your laptops, your smartphones with the built-in feature that allows that.
And factory reset or reset the device. Don't like the watch that I was doing. It gave me the option of just reinstalling the software. That's not the same thing, right? Like that just loads the software. The data is still there.
Yeah, you could do that on your iPhone or your mobile phone too. They give you that option of and same thing with laptops of just reinstall my data or reinstall factory reset everything back to the way it was when I first bought it. But also keep in mind, even when you do that, forensically, you can still get data, the free space, Slack space, what have you, unless you're taking an additional step, which is like you're actually securely wiping it. And that always usually involves like a program, a third-party type of program, right, that will take time and actually do so many data wipes or what have you. But even then, forensically, there are things that can still be found. But again, it all gets back to your threat profile, right? If you're a celebrity or a politician you most likely will have people after you and probably want to buy your previous laptop that you have wiped 3 times to see if they can get any data off of that. I mean, if you're Hunter Biden, not to bring politics into this, but I'm just saying, people want his laptop for whatever reason. So, like, that's the things to be concerned about. But if you want to be extra paranoid and, DOD wipe your laptop before selling it, more power to you. You
or
can
shred it.
Absolutely do that. Or the best way, right, is to pull the drive out and get your power drill out and drill some holes through it. Absolutely. Great.
Or you can put it in a bath of muriatic acid and then embed it in a 2-inch thick layer of acrylic rosin or something and make a tabletop.
We have that laying around the house. Yeah.
Make a coffee table out of it.
Of course. So it all gets back down to, your risk level, but there are basic things that everybody should be doing. And that is, factory resetting your devices before giving away or selling.
Yeah. And think about what devices have data. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
We have devices that have data now that we don't even think about the data being there.
Pretty much anything that you have a plug, or you have to plug it in or has a battery, has some way of configuring it, right?
I bought these weird lights for my, around my TV that they're Govy lights. And they're sound sensitive and whatever. And I thought it'd be fun, right? Whatever. And, I have a full-blown account on the thing with my email address, my address to the house and everything on these lights. And I'm like, man, I didn't think about this, right? The idea of factory resetting my ambiance lights is a weird thought process.
Yeah, maybe we'll do another episode just on SD cards. That in particular is really problematic because I can't tell you how many times I've seen devices that people have bought and there's an SD card already in the device, tablets and stuff. And the previous owner just forgot that they had an SD card with all of their pictures on that SD card. Yeah.
Yep. So that wraps up this segment of Awarement. Brought to you by ClickArmor, the cybersecurity training platform that's designed for engagement and for tailorability. So if you need anything special in your training to fit your policies, your risks, your terminology, or your workflows, come and check us out at clickarmor.ca.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And I think that wraps up the show today. Thank you, Scott, for driving all the way out here to record the episode.
Yeah, I think I'll do it again next week.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, you've got some amazing internet too in your car, by the way. So
yeah, that's my iPhone 6s Plus.
Nice. High speed. I love it.
Better than home.
Yes. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Right. And until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and stay private. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on X @SharedSec, and help support the podcast by joining our Patreon to get ad-free episodes, bonus content, and many more exclusive supporter-only benefits. Visit sharedsecurity.net/supporter for more details.